That alone, verse number 55. A long dream is this, like sleep, this perishes every day. In the same way, dream also. The perishing intelligence does not see what belongs to aloneness, and hence is constantly confused. Commentary. In the previous verses, the two alternatives expressed were the deep sleep and the wakeful states. There was no mention of the dream state. There is one common feature between the dream and wakeful states, that in both we are conscious of a conceiving and perceiving I. The notion of I is operating as the central reference in both of them. Both have a time sense and a space sense, as well as the identity of knower, doer, and enjoyer. All these disappear only in the state of deep sleep. In this verse, by contrast, primacy is given to the dream, where before the wakeful was contrasted with deep sleep, now dream is. When wakeful experience and the dream state are taken together, the whole of life can be treated as a single dream of experience. In it, our intelligence operates intermittently, since deep sleep is not a continuous thing. We have no use of our intelligence in deep sleep. We cannot discern with it by using it as an instrument or a critical faculty, as we do in the wakeful state. The question is, why are the wakeful and the dream state put together here, as if there is no difference between them, while at the same time transactional life is given only a secondary importance? The process we are undergoing in this work is a transference from Maya, the seeming first cause of the transactional world, to an ultimate cause. If Maya both is and is not, it has no proper basis. For anything to be, it should have a real basis. So an existential ground is to be established for any experience. An experience may be an illusion of something, but there still should be a ground for that illusion. When you say something is superimposed, the question arises, superimposed on what? Here, Kevalam is given as the ground for the superimposition of whatever is experienced in the waking and the dream. We could still retain the wakeful experience, which is very prominent, instead of bringing in the dream. But Narayana Guru wants to point out one defect which affects them both and is important in the present context. There is an overall influence of an unknown entity which affects our mind when we are wakeful and think we are critically examining things. We assure ourselves of the certitude of what we are arriving at. In the dream state also we use the same kind of critical faculty. We assure ourselves that this is not a dream. It is really real. Even when we try to find out if it is true or not, we get every evidence that it is. We fool ourselves. After some time we wake up and contrast wakeful experience with what we have discovered in the dream state and find out it is not true. Only then do we realize we have been fooled. One difference between the wakeful and dream states is when we go from the dream to the wakeful, there is some retention of the experience of the dream, and this can be deliberately recalled to be compared with the succeeding wakeful experience. But when we go from the wakeful to the dream, there is no retention of a memory, cognized as a wakeful experience which can be kept at hand, ready for comparison. We do not decide that what we have experienced in the wakeful is after all not true. That is left unexamined. The main conception of treating the wakeful as a dream originated with Gaudapada. Shankara then brought in one characteristic of wakefulness that is different from the dream. You can connect one wakeful experience with another, thus making a continuity out of it in your life. But you do not make a continuous linking of dream with dream. This is certainly true, but it is somewhat besides the point, since here Narayanaguru is treating both as one long dream. This can be accepted because we are not going to use transactional experience in this particular verse. At this point, we are moving away from the transactional to the absolute state. Earlier, Narayanaguru said that where the still voice of Om concludes is a place of self-luminosity. From the R state, the transactional world, where there are thousands of names, forms, and interests, we go to the U stage, where the forms and names and interests are all generated by one's own individual consciousness. Beyond this point, the subject and object are left behind. In a sense, everything perishes when there is no longer any I or any this. In this, the state, the intelligence is extinguished and everything dies away. It is only after total extinguishment that we enter into the next state, that of the aloneness. It is the aloneness of that voice which has now lost all its dynamics of manifestation. There it is entering into the total realm of the unmanifest. We are confused when we come to this. We cannot remain there. We come back again and again to the familiar world of our experience. This final aspect could have been our realization, but we are conditioned to expect a thing to be known, and we are in an operational field of knowledge only when the individuated intelligence can be applied to definite things. There you definitely see a thing as a thing, and an I as an I. If the distinctions of the I-ness and the thingness are taken away, you don't know how to deal with it. Until you develop a new kind of appraisal of the situation, this whole process is an impossibility. Only when one relative factor and another relative factor are both grounded on the absolute, or at least on a normative notion of the absolute, can the relative factor examine the other element and think of its existence, its awareness, and its value, since these are all absolute notions. When these separated entities are not there, only the absolute is. Nothing is compared. Nothing is made a subject of study. Very soon you are thrown back into your position of a relativistic I looking at a relativistic this. This happens repeatedly. You become again and again confused. This confusion takes away from your mind the value and worth of what you have lived transactionally. However vigorous your experience of the transactional world may have been, when you experienced along with it purely subjective things with no continuity, and now you sit back and recall the things which have happened and the things of which you have only dreamt. How do you differentiate the memory content of these two? A thing which actually happened and a thing which was only seen in the dream both become memories. Both can be recalled, both can be revived, but no trace of either experience is left. They have become a knowledge of the past. Memory is a knowledge of the past. The quality of it in its essence is pain, pleasure, good, bad. This means the wakeful transaction loses its vigor. It no longer holds good. It has become a thing of the past. The dream has also become a thing of the past. When you put together these two things of the past, the wakeful and the dream, which have blended together in memory, you have what Narayana Guru calls a prolonged dream. Your wakeful dream and your dream together make one big dream. The whole of life becomes like a dream. Occasionally you fight with someone on some issue in wakeful life. Then after some time you make up. You once again agree and feel it was foolish for you to fight like that. The incident goes into the background of your mind as a discarded memory, and thereafter you treat each other as if nothing had ever happened. The phenomenologists call this a reduction. The reduction is that actual things and their values are reduced to an eidetic notion. The value or significance assigned to a thing at a particular moment is now considered only as a special feature of the reaction that was released in you because of your personality makeup. Or it may be that others were present in that situation and you were under the spell of a kind of mob mind or mass mind. In the dream, an unknown force influences your mind so that you behave in a certain way despite yourself, and yet you know that at the time it looked as if it were your decision. Like that, you can see that the wakeful experience is also not free of an overall dominating principle. This directing or dominating principle could be taken as the operation of a collective mind, of which your individual mind is just a part. Or perhaps there were long stored up incipient memories which were looking for an opportunity to actualize. What we are seeing as the here and now are the accumulated urges which were lying dormant for a long time, finding opportunities to influence segments of your experience from within. Although it appears to be the individual's experience, the actual content belongs to many previously suppressed occasions in a temporal series. In other words, what you tried to accomplish on a subject 4 years ago, 3 years ago, 1 year ago, a few months ago, last week, the same thing has come up many times, but something in your ego repressed it. Finally, it gets to a breaking point where that repression is no longer possible because all the resistance is worn down. Then it comes out as an experience in the wakeful. In this way, almost all our wakeful experience has an unconscious history behind it, which is impelling its operation. The same thing happens in the dream state also. A subjective phenomenon desires to express itself in order to see how it looks, so to speak. Earlier, Narayana Guru said that knowledge to know its own state has become all this phenomenal world, so that through this intelligence it can see what it is. Human intelligence is considered an omega point into which knowledge has evolved, so that through it everything is seen. The alpha point of self-expression terminates with the omega of peak experience. This is what the first part of this verse describes, like the deep sleep which brings a daily ending to our lives. This discerning intelligence comes to a termination again and again. Intelligence terminates like a wave. A wave is born where there is no wave, only water, as the product of several forces. After it arises, it may travel for a long time as an invisible impulse in the ocean. Finally, it reaches the place of its expression, where it comes to a peak, breaks into its full expression, and finally dissipates. After it has terminated, there is once again no wave. Then it becomes another wave. The first wave has its own personality, and the second wave has another personality, but actually there is only water. In the water there is no duality, there is only aloneness. The aloneness of the water is called Kevalam. The waves all happen within the all-oneness of water. Our problem is we become confused about the reality of the wave. Is it real or isn't it? When we saw it at its peak expression, we thought it was very real. But where has it gone now? What is its status once it has merged with the water? Does the wave's essence remain preserved somewhere? No, it does not remain anywhere. Should we keep a record of it? We keep records of only the most powerful waves which wreak havoc along the shore. But that's all there is. The thingness of a thing is seen as a separate reality, but nothing really exists other than what we retain in the present. Here Husserl's phenomenological explanation becomes relevant. In it he examines the content of memory. Time is involved. For instance, with the wave rising and falling, there is movement in space and duration in time. If the movement is happening to a thing by itself, without the human mind cognizing it, it is as good as not happening with regard to our world of values and considerations. It becomes relevant to a human only when it is a part of his experience. When one experiences something, it is an experience of the present. As the present moves away into the past, although the clarity of what was experienced becomes diminished, there is a kind of frantic endearment of the experience. It is not allowed to perish. This means your retention of it is forced into the present. The retention that is lived in the present is the memory of the past. It is not only a memory of the past, it is the past. Actually, there is no past. The past is the present retaining its own experience. Thus, in the present, you can have a retention of a retention, of a retention, of a retention, endlessly, never allowing anything to pass away. There is a snowballing of retentions in the present of what is called the past. The process of retention transforms things into shadowy substances. Rather than the actuality of a substance, we emphasize its historical, mythical, legendary, or fantastic aspects, which are all shades of appreciation of only the content of retention. Because we are focused on the shadow rather than the substance, we become confused. We may be outwardly confident in our beliefs, but we are nonetheless confused at the core of our understanding. We cannot make up our mind about the value of anything. This is what is meant in this verse by Anisham Brahmacharanno. This verse next mentions a state where what is objectively experienced and what is subjectively experienced are both annulled. The subject-object aspect are gone, and what comes thereafter is a non-subjective experience. There is no I. As there is no I, you cannot say whether an experience is of the individual or the collective. Its universality cannot be determined, and its individual relationship can never be stated because there is no center of reference. We can say something is of an individual only when there is a focal point of consciousness to which it can be related, the centralized orientation of an I. Where this is not, there is only aloneness. The Kevalam or aloneness here is to be treated the same as where the still voice of Om culminates. The effect of this in your daily experience is that you come to use a new kind of criticism. While there is a retention of the content of the past, there is also a criticism of the qualitative validity of that particular experience. If you are angry or in a state of grief or in pain, you can look at it critically. How much of this is my real anger? How much of it is real pain? Or in a positive experience, how much of this is my real achievement? Then there comes a pause. The psychological inflow of an overpowering dynamic, which makes the whole thing very real to you, gets suspended. It's as if you suddenly become ashamed of your enthusiasm, ashamed of your exaggeration. A lot of the fervor with which you had been accomplishing an act, appreciating an incident, or making a claim on something drops away. When we thus critically examine an experience, it proves itself to have the same kind of content which dreams have. If you continue to experience the mediocrity of a thing once it is shorn of all exaggeration, it takes on the status of a mere dream. If such a critical assessment of the past holds good for what is now entering your consciousness, you cannot get excited about it. You still make yourself as efficient as possible. As you did on a previous occasion, with all vigor and enthusiasm, you still perform the pertinent actions with great consciousness. But at the same time, you know this is just a passing phenomenon. You do what is necessary because you belong to this system of embodied beings who are operated upon by natural impulses. It is a little like a robot, a machine operating. Someone has switched it on, and so it has to function. It has to perform its programs. You did not begin this machinery. It is just functioning by some natural propulsion. So you go on functioning, but personally you are disinterested in the whole business. When you lived it with interest and became very excited about everything, it did not persist as a matter of excitement. It proved to be of the same stuff as dreams. According to this instruction, you come to a place where you are no longer excited about experiences. You do not treat them as good or bad, even though previously that may have been very important to you. You no longer attach a moral tag that makes you feel guilty or benevolent. You don't treat things as bright or dull, or true or untrue in the relative sense. You just treat them as phases flowing past. And because you are no longer excited, you are no longer terrified. There is no threat in anything. Insecurity could only be about the things that are passing away, so that ceases to eat at you. There is no gain you can retain. It is all just passing phenomena. to which you have a feeling of let it be. This attitude brings you to live in the present, in this very moment, because that is all that is possible. There comes a kind of sameness. What once seemed very painful as well as what seemed very sweet become mere relative factors. The retention of the painful and the sweet are only two models. By themselves they are no longer sweet or painful when they are recalled to mind. The sameness that is in the recall of the retention is also experienced as it is taking place. That is how it should be. Narayana Guru says you fumble at the termination and do not realize it is all happening within the total oneness. You are still confused. He will examine it further in the next verse. The meditation of this verse requires a very deep introspective analysis of one's personal experience at a time when you are passing through a crisis. At the same time, the crisis can be seen as a phantom even while you are living it. This can be accomplished only when you can detach your mind in the thick of actual situations and can see how the exciting elements are passing into a retentive world even as you are living them in the here and now. On certain occasions in my life, when I had a physical or mental affliction, I took the opportunity for the meditative purpose of evaluating the actual pain, the actual agony to which the body or mind was subjected. I quietly watched the body's pain and wrote descriptions of exactly how I felt it to be painful. Immediately there came a psychological turnover of my interest from the pain itself to the norms of pain, intellectually conceived. This made the pain already a phantom. The pain becomes less painful because my interest was of a critic, making a critique of it. When you become a critic of your own pain, half of it goes away. Then you question whether the other half is real, because the other half already left. This is even more poignant when you are in an angry state and you make a journal of your anger. The bulk of the anger immediately dies down and becomes even humorous. You pose as the angry person and make a caricature of your anger. It becomes so satirical of your own state of mind that you see yourself as a big fool to get angry like that. There is so little content in it. It is blown all out of proportion. Once you see this, the whole thing leaves you and you wonder, what is this thing called my anger? What is this thing called my pain? What are these things called my excitement, my sense of fame, my sense of importance? All of it is reduced to an evenness. Somehow, up to now, you have not cultivated that acumen. You can try it and see what kind of difference it makes. And the free translation of verse 55 is as follows. Our waking experience is also like a long dream. Both waking and dreaming terminate after a period of time. Because of the confusion generated by this alternation, no one sees the aloneness of the universal substratum.